Good morning. Today we are going over Geometry Lesson 4.3 on translations, and this is the third of the three rigid transformations that we are covering in this unit. I think in many ways it's the simplest of the three because all you're doing with this particular transformation is you're moving the entire geometric figure in one direction. You aren't flipping it, you aren't turning it, you're just moving it in one direction. So all of the points, theoretically speaking, move in the same direction, like my pin. All the points that might be in my pin are moving in the same direction from left to right. So we sometimes call this a shift, by the way, and that makes sense if you're shifting something from left to right or right to left. You know, that term is very common. After we are done with this, then the rest of the unit is going to be devoted to actually doing combinations of these transformations and figuring out where they land. But let's get to this one. It covers Geometry IXL Skill Lessons L2 and L3. L2 involves simply graphing the image from the pre-image. L3, that involves finding the coordinates of the pre-image after you have been given those of the image. So again, you're going to take notes on this, and please put your header in as follows. Make sure you print very plainly and in a way that I can see it. Your first and last name, the full first and last name, no abbreviations, no aliases, and your date, the period, and the lesson notes name and number. And not only would you do it on your notes, but if you email it to me, please put it on your email header as well. I want to see this header information on the email header. So, and you know, the bottom line is I'll mark you down if you don't do that. So for full credit, you want to give me all of that. All right, so take notes on this video, as I've said, and then I'm going to give you extra time to upload this because I, sent this to you late. So you're going to have until 11:59 p.m. Wednesday, October 28. Okay, that's this next Wednesday. And your test on this is going to be, depending upon which period you're in, November 2 or 3. Okay, so that will be in the following week. All right, so let's look at the first example here. We're talking about now what's the graph of the image going to be starting once we start with this pre-image. So it says this is, and this should really say it does say it right. What is the image of triangle BCD? So this is the pre-image of triangle BCD. It's what we start with. Where are we going to end? Well, they say you want to translate it, which means you want to shift it, and they say 8 units left. So the example says 8 units to the left, so that means, for instance, point D here, which is at where x is 4, we're going to go left 8 units. So 1, 2, 3, 4 takes us to 0, and then 1, 2, or 5, 6, 7, and 8 takes us to -4. So D prime, which would be the point for the image, would be over there. Now, in doing these, I want you to utilize the quadrant structure. So remember, I had indicated that the upper right corner of your graph is quadrant 1, where the x and y coordinates are both positive. Over here in quadrant 2, which is to the left of the y-axis but above the x-axis, the x and y coordinates are x is positive and y is negative. Down here in the third quadrant, which is to the left of the y-axis and below the x-axis, x is going to be negative and y is going to be negative. And then over here in quadrant 4, the x coordinate will be positive and the y coordinate will be negative. So, you're going to be shifting, and so you're going to be moving your triangle over here into probably well, I'm going to say mostly quadrant 2. It started mostly in quadrant 1. Why do I say mostly? That's because point B here is down in quadrant 3, where the x-coordinate is positive and the y-coordinate is negative. So it would end up in quadrant 4, assuming we do 8 shifts to the left. And C up here is definitely going to be going from quadrant 1 to quadrant 2. But D here, which is on the line here between quadrant 1 and quadrant 4, we don't really have to worry about the fact that we don't know which quadrant it really is in, because the y-coordinate is 0, and 0 is neither positive or negative. We're just going to move it along the x-axis again, the 8 units that we talked about. So it's going to end up over here, and the x-coordinates over in this quadrant 4 are negative. Okay, so that's what you're going to do. So let me just run you through this. It's fairly easy, fairly quick. So we're going to start out with the first. They start out with B. Okay, so we're going to start out with B as well. So B here we said was at, well, we didn't say. What is it at? X looks like it's at 5, and Y is X is, 5, Y is -1. Okay, that's the X and Y, and that fits with, again, quadrant 4, where your X value is going to be positive and your Y value is going to be negative, positive, negative. So we're going to move it over here to quadrant 3. So B goes over here to B prime, and if you'll note, B prime, the positive and, the X and Y coordinates are both negative. And so you look at this, and when we move 8 units over from where X is 5, this is 5 units, and then 3 more takes you over here to -3. So this is X is -3, and Y is -1. Okay? Both negative. Fits quadrant 3 perfectly. Okay. So moving on, we're going to do now, going to do point C here of our triangle. So point C is squarely in quadrant 1, where the X and Y coordinates are going to both be positive, and it's going over here to quadrant 2, where the X and Y coordinates are X is positive, Y is negative. So C here is at X is 5 and Y is 8. Okay, I'm just looking down here. This is where X would be 5 and Y up here is 8. Okay, so we have our X and Y coordinates for C. C prime, moving 8 units to the left. We're going to go, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's where the X coordinates are going to be -3. X coordinate is -3. And the Y coordinate is also going to be 8. So negative, positive, negative, I wrote this down wrong. X is negative, Y is positive over here. Because these are all X values and they're all negative. So X is negative, Y is positive. Okay? So now we have C prime in the correct quadrant, and the negative and positive values match up perfectly. Okay? All right. So let's move on. And so now we move D, which is at 4, 0. Here's X is 4, Y is 0. And so we're going to move it again 8 units. And when we do that, then it's going to take it over here to -4, going 8 units. And these are, again, 8 absolute value units. That's why we don't worry about negatives. We just are going 8 absolute value units to the left. That takes us over to where X is -4. So X is -4, and y is positive, well, it's 0. So it's neither positive nor negative. But you see it fits again. Quadrant 2, x is going to be negative, y is going to be positive. 0 isn't positive or negative, but it would be positive if you were further up into the quadrant. And of course, quadrant 1 over here, x is positive, y is positive. Okay, so that then creates, once we draw our lines, a new triangle. So this is the pre-image. And note the pre-image uses the letters B, C, D here without these little tick marks that we associate with the image. So this is the image. And so this is triangle B prime, C prime, D prime. Okay? So be sure you use the wording pre-image and image, and you use the B prime, C prime, D prime, the prime tick marks to show, again, the pre-images changed coordinates. They're the same, they would be the same coordinates excepting for the fact that everything moved. Okay? All right, so now we're going to go on to example 2. And here we're going to find the x and y coordinates for the image of P prime, Q prime, R prime. So now be careful about that. We want the coordinates for that. So this is triangle PQR. This is, again, the pre-image. Let's put it over here, pre-image. That's the pre-image. So we're looking for the image. That's this, the image. Okay? Now, when you set up a mapping of coordinates, this is the format that you will use in geometry. So you start with the coordinates for PQR. So they've already given them to you. P is x is -1, y is -8. Q is x is -1, y is 0, right there on the x-axis. And R is x is 0, and y is -6, right there on the y-axis. So there you see them. So you want to now put the coordinates for the image over here, all right? So what they tell you is, all right, so what they want you to do, and I didn't put this in here, let me put this at the top. Find the x and y coordinates for the image of PQR that is shifted 1 unit down. Okay, 1 unit down. So that's, without that information, you don't really know where you're going to be shifting this triangle to. But that's, in fact, what this problem requires. Okay, so you do the same kind of thing that you did before. You take the first coordinate, which is P, okay, which is at -1, -8. This is -1, and here's -8. So this is P. And this down here, although it's hard to see, this is P prime down here at the bottom. Okay? So you're shifting it down 1 unit. That means you're moving P prime, you're moving P down to where P prime is, just simply by shifting the y coordinate 1 unit. It's the only thing that changes. And you'll notice, if you look at this, when you set this up now, you're going to have coordinates that show x at -1, which was what the x is, so it doesn't change. But when you're moving anything down or up, you're using the y coordinates. If you're told to shift left or right, you're using the x coordinates. Why? Because the x-axis moves left to right, so anything moving left or right is going to change the x coordinate. And up or down, that's the realm of the y-axis. So anything where you're going up or down is going to change the y coordinates. So you started with -8, You end up with negative 9. Okay? All right, so then you're going to move point Q again, which is at negative 1, 0, down 1 unit. So point Q here was up here on the x-axis. That, you know, the y-intercept or the the y-coordinate is 0, so that tells you this is the x-intercept. You're moving it down 1 unit, so that means that you go from where y is 0 to y is negative 1. Okay, so this is Q prime down here. Okay, and now you're going to move point R, which is at 0, negative 6, down 1 unit. So it's on up here. It's on the y-axis. It's actually the y-intercept. X is 0, y is negative 6. But you move the y down 1 unit, that makes x the negative 7. So R prime is negative 7. So, all right, we said that P was negative 1, negative 8, but we are moving down 1 unit. So, so we're going to go down, let's see, from negative 8 to negative 9. Now, they tell you you're subtracting 1 from each y-coordinate. Well, that's what negative 1 is. But if you have a negative number, you might as well just be adding negative numbers. So just keep counting. So negative 8 to negative 9, all right? So I've got negative 1 for my x, but what changes is the y-coordinate, which is now negative 9. Okay? And then Q, x is negative 1, y is 0. So this 0, we have to go down 1 unit. So we're subtracting 1 now. We can say subtract 1. That's probably easier to say. So x is negative 1. But if we subtract 1 unit from 0, we get to y is negative 1. And then r over here, if r is 0, negative 6, you go down negative 1. In other words, subtracting 1 from negative 6, it's down 1 unit. So you're going to x is 0 and y is negative 7. Okay, so this is what IXL is going to ask you to fill out. So make sure you're following this, and you can see that it shifts down like this. All right. All right, so these are two very simple examples. IXL does get a little more complicated as you go, but that's the way IXL works. If you struggle with this, please, please, please go in and do the help me solve it or give me an example. Do those, and when all else fails, what do? Who are you going to call? Not Ghostbusters, you call Mr. Warren. I will be in class, of course, when you see me on Monday, Tuesday, depending upon the period you're in next week. You can talk to me in class after we do our quick opening to the presentations. Or you can use chat, or you can see me during office hours. So you got plenty of time. Test won't be until the following week, November 2nd and 3rd. Okay? All right, we're done. Have a good one.